Okay, we're back, and I'd like to turn it over to the Secretary Treasurer to do the audited financial statement highlights. I'll turn it over to the Secretary Treasurer to do the audited financial statement highlights.
Right. Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon again. Kim, I don't know if you're going to screen the that presentation.
Yeah. Did you want me to share the screen with you as well? Or
yeah, if you could, that will help. Yeah. Or if you want me to, I can share it from, yeah, if you can share it from there. All right, thank you again. And Chris has just gave a highlights as well of the audited financial statements for the year ended 31 August 2023. These financial statements were also presented to the audit committee. We actually went through these financials in greater detail, and as also noted in the audit committee report. So here are just the highlights that we also just shared more information. Hopefully I will not be duplicating what Chris has already said. But however, we also just came up with to say, what are the revenue drivers? What was actually driving our revenue when we compare with the budget and also with 2022, that is the prior year. So we noted that the enrollment growth actually had a positive effect to our WMA, to our weighted moving average, which our funding is based on. We also noted that there were additional grants that we received than what we had actually budgeted. That is more than what we had actually budgeted. Also, the area capacity utilization has got an effect in terms of our revenues that we receive. We also see that there was also positive interest rates on our high cash balances, which actually average about 5.6 million over the 2 years. That is going to between 2022 and 2023. We also had increased core and extracurricular activities. All these actually aided to driving our revenue. You can go to the next. Okay. So expenditures were also driven by our enrollment. As you know, our certified staff and support staff, especially the EAs, are actually driven by our enrollments as well. We also noted that obviously supplies also are driven by enrollment as such as well. Inflation, as we know that our inflation has actually been higher in 2022, 2023 when we compare with the previous year. Perhaps what we didn't anticipate that prices will actually go up to the extent that they went, some about 20%, some even 30% than what we had actually budgeted. Also, there is the increased core and extracurricular activities. As you know, after COVID, the expectation was that obviously kids want to be up and about. Just there were generally more activities that are actually happening. So we actually look at some of those particular areas that actually drive was driving our revenue, and actually noted that our enrollment is actually increasing over the past 3 years. And obviously, this also resulted in enrollment growth funding that we actually received, which I actually received in the past 2 years. As you can see on the graphs that I've actually prepared there, where we have got 2021, 2022, and also budget 2023 and the actual for 2023. When you look at that, you see that most of our students are within the grades 1 and 9, followed by the grade 10 to 12, and also our kindergarten. Also, that is the next lot, and then our students that are on reserves actually form just about 2% of all our students, and therefore 98% of all our students are actually funded by our Better Education. Okay. So comparatives. When you look at on the graphs that I've shown there as well, is that we are comparing revenue and expenditures for actuals 2023, and we also have for the budget 2023 and actuals 2022. As when we look at the actual 2022 and the budget 2022, we actually note that there was a significant increase, or our revenues and expenditures for 2023 were actually significantly higher. Not significantly higher, they were more, they were higher by about 2 million when we compare with those other year, the budget and the actuals. And the reasons for in the 2023, we actually recorded a surplus that was actually driven by revenue that increased by 3.8, and that we actually note, as also has been highlighted by MNIP, is that 1.7 was related to the weighted moving average increasing, and the new grants that came about. We also had 0.8 million, which was actually an increase in when we compare with the budget that related to the Jordan's Principle grants that we received. We actually received than what we had actually budgeted, and correspondingly, the expenses also were higher than the budget, and that is also because of the increased enrollment that we actually had. When we compare with the conservative enrollment that we had actually budgeted, we needed to have additional staff, that is in terms of the certified staff and also the uncertified staff that we needed in our classrooms, especially the EAs. Sorry. We also noted that our maintenance costs were actually higher due to inflation. This is actually driven by the supply bottlenecks that we have been witnessing in the schools in the year 2022-2023. So the next graph is actually highlights how we actually broke down our expenditures by program, that is by instruction. As you can see, actually in constitute about 75% of all our costs actually are in instruction, followed by operations and maintenance, systems and administration, transportation, and then external services. So we actually looked at a deeper dive in the program of operations, and just wanted to highlight that in within operations and maintenance and transportation programs, our funding continued to fall short of the cost of running those programs. And we actually recognize a deficit of 1.5 million and 122,000 in 2022-2023. These were in operations and maintenance. There was a number of factors that actually resulted in that, where we actually note that we, as as the auditor has actually been talking about, the amortization or the changes in terms of the amortization amounts that were actually being accounted for in the previous year, which actually had to be changed in this particular year. That actually had an effect in effect on our operation and maintenance. We also had an effect that which did not happen in the previous year, nor was it also budgeted for, issues to do with the outreach school, which actually closed last year, and that property was actually, we're actually leasing it, and at the end of the day, we actually had to write off about 320,000 of that particular transaction. We also had an increase in our expenses related to the program that has actually been proposed by Jocelyn Control, that also had an impact on those particular program. The amount there was about 176,000. We also had utilities, which actually increased by 270,000 when you compare with the previous year. So when you look at all those, maybe except for the 320 and the 176, most of those particular transactions, especially the increases in our contracted services, will continue to have those increased cost in those particular services. And without the ministry adding to the funding, we will continue to have these deficits in this particular program. Similarly, transportation, we also have the same effect where the funding is not adequate to cover the operations. Okay, here we further broke down our reserves into capital and operating reserves. And as also been alluded to by the auditor, is that our capital reserves, when you look, are actually 2.8 million in 2022-23, whilst our operating reserves are actually 2.6 million. And you can see that from the graphs that we had more operating reserves in 2022 than what we now have. It is as a result of the deliberate decisions that were taken by the board to transfer some reserves and also apply to the minister to transfer some reserves into capital reserves. And that's why you see that in 2022 and 2023, the capital and the operating reserves kind of leveled out. And also just to take note, in our capital reserves, 33% of those capital reserves are under the control of schools, whilst 50% also 50% of the operating reserves are under the control of schools. And just also to note that our operating reserves actually cover 9.2 operating days, whereas our target is 5 days. And we further analyze those reserves in that the under the operating reserves, as I had highlighted, that 50% is under the control of the schools. Within that 1.3 under the schools, there is 688,000 that relates to SGF funds, and actually only be used for those for the SGF purposes. And also the capital reserves, just highlighting also that within the division also has got control over about 1.9 million that is in our capital reserves. And finally, in conclusion, is that the auditor actually provided us with a clean audit report, as already been highlighted by Chris. I think that's my report, and maybe I can stop questions. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the Secretary Treasurer regarding that?
Do we receive any rebates?
Sorry, come again.
In terms of the utilities, do we receive any of the rebates that government sometimes provides?
Not that I'm aware of, sir, and it's something that we can always check, but if we had actually received them, they would have been incorporated in those financials, but if they came subsequent to the year end, perhaps it's something that will then have to account for them appropriately as well. But as to my knowledge, we haven't received any.
Thank you.
Any further questions? I would like to ask if someone would like to make a motion to the release of this. Go ahead, Trustee Miller.
Thank you. I move that the board receive the audited financial statements dated August 31st, 2023 as information, approving their release to the public and to Alberta Education.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on those? And I'll call the question. All those who would approve. Thank you. Right now, I would like to go to 5.2. To the transportation update, Mr. Bouchard.
These are well aware that we have been challenged with the new transportation regulation, specifically implementing the new distances whereby we must provide transportation effective September 2024 to students in K to 6, 1 kilometer and out, and 7 to 12 students 2 kilometers and out. That has been an ongoing challenge to which we've partnered with Wolf Creek to try to find a solution to. I'm happy to inform the board that just this morning, at the end of the morning before lunch, we received word from the Minister of Education notifying divisions that the new implementation date is now September 2025. So that definitely will buy us some time to implement the new regulation. And further, the ministers asked boards to work with the department to provide feedback on the existing regulation and how it's meeting our needs. So more to come on that, I'm sure, but I just wanted to provide the board an update on that.
Thank you. That is good news. Good to hear. Now I'd like to go to 5.3. Trustee Miller.
Thank you. This was the government announcement updates. Yesterday, if you didn't hear about it, there was an announcement by the Ministry of Education for new funding of $30 million into schools in Alberta. I'm just wondering how that will affect our division. If there's any updates or news. I know it's only less than 24 hours ago, but.
Yeah, thank you, Trustee Miller. So we do know that the minister has announced that funding as of yesterday. We also were made aware that the funding would be released to divisions immediately or right away. So we're waiting for that email confirming our final amount. We do know that there's been revisions to the funding manual. Upon quick glance through that manual, it does not appear that the division will receive very much additional funding because we already had met the criteria under the old funding amount. The division had experienced about a 4.5% enrollment increase. So we were already planning on about $1,500 per student for those for that growth. The minister has now made some adjustments to whereby divisions even under 2% receive additional funding. So we'll have to wait and see. Nick and his team will have to work out the numbers to see exactly how we're impacted. But unless I'm mistaken, I'm not sure that we'll see much impact to that announcement.
Great,
So, don't say robbing people to pay for, there's some changes and not much money is coming into the board.
Well, hopefully we'll be pleasantly surprised, but yeah, I'm not anticipating a lot of extra money for us.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other discussion on that? Okay, then I'd like to go on to 6.2, policy 8. And that's on committees of the board. And first I would like to ask someone to read the motion. And then we can discuss. 6.2, policy 8.
Okay, I think.
Go ahead.
That the board give policy 8, committees of the board, first and second reading as presented.
Everyone's had a chance to look at that policy 8. Is there any discussion on that? And I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that's Yep. We'll move on to 6.3. Alberta Education Results Report. And I would like someone to read the motion.
That's correct.
Trustee Burke?
That the board approve the 2022-2023 Alberta Education Results Report, AERRF.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on that? Go ahead, Trustee Miller.
Thank you. I just wanted to, I guess, commend the staff in the division for their hard work. We know last year was the first year coming out of COVID, and although we can't attribute some of the results up or down to that learning loss within the students, that quite often within the results that STARS often above the provincial average in unit areas. So that was really good to see. And the other thing within the report that I wanted to note was the focus on mental health. And although some of those questions are new in that area, it's really promising to see and have the understanding that mental health is an integral part to a child's ability to learn. That's obviously one of our board priorities. So just 2 minutes.
Great, thank you. Yes, I thought it was well put together. Thank you so much for all your hard work. Discussions? Then I would like to call the question. All those in favor? 6.4. Where's the King's School International Travel Request? Would someone like to put forward this motion? Go ahead, Trustee.
I move that the board give approval in principle to Royce the King's international travel request to Italy during spring break 2025 as presented. It is understood that the board assumes no financial liability to students and or their parents should the board cancel an approved student trip.
Is there any discussion on this? Go ahead, Mr.
I looked through the itinerary. I'm not sure if I missed it or not, but I didn't see any scheduled mass time while they're enrolled. I don't know if I did see that.
Go ahead, Trustee Miller.
It was noted, it was probably really easy to miss, and I don't remember exactly where, but it is noted that it will be part of the trip. They just haven't put it on the agenda yet because they're not exactly sure where everything will fall.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would hope that, and it's really, the Vatican it would be nice. Is there any other discussion on this? Then I will call the question. All those in favor? And that's passed. Thank you. Brings us to 6.5, the alternate ACSTA Board Director. That's the Alberta Catholic School Trustee Association Board Director. So if someone could read the motion first, Trustee Eflin.
Right.
Just go ahead. Okay.
That the board appoints Trustee Michael Nehman as the alternate ACSTA Director for the remainder of the 2023-24 school year.
Is there any discussion on this? And I will call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. 6.6, this is the First Nation, Métis and Inuit Relations Policy. I'll turn this over to trustee Lehman.
I'll move, that the board direct the policy committee to develop a First Nations, Métis and Inuit relations policy.
There's some discussion.
Speak briefly on it. The board has many initiatives geared toward First Nation, Métis and Inuit people and education. This includes the board priority goal. With our intentional focus on this issue, I believe that it is imperative that we have a document that guides our board. The necessity for this policy goes beyond the board's present goals. This policy is also needed as initiatives and attempts for reconciliation need to be implemented in an intentional and careful manner. I do not believe that the development of this policy should be a rushed process, and I believe that we will consult stakeholders and the people knowledgeable about this topic to develop a comprehensive policy that appropriately and diligently furthers the efforts of truth and reconciliation that have already begun in our division.
Thank you. Policy committee is ready to work on this.
I believe so.
The big project. Discussion on. Trustee Miller?
Along with, I'm planning on voting in favor of this motion that, thank you for this.
I agree. Any other discussion? Question, all those in favor of this? It's unanimous. Thank you, trustee William. Down to the committee reports. All had a chance to read over the reports, the audit committee report. Committee report. Are there any questions about the audit committee report? The finance committee report, board report. Any questions as far as the finance committee? I do have a question about D. Board decides. Is that what the board is going to decide, or is that the board decides? Not sure about that statement. Trustee Miller?
Thank you. If memory serves me right, the board will ultimately decide.
Well, ultimately.
Yeah, through policy, but it was an item that came up for further exploration at the committee. And at the end of the day, everything goes back to the board for board decisions,
So that's going to be board. This is going to be a part of the policy or?
The finance committee did not explore it further at that time, so we're just looking at this and it may come back to the board for recommendations, or it may not. It may go back to policy, I'm not sure.
Is there any other discussion about the finance committee? 7.4, trustee protocol ad hoc committee. We've all had a chance to have a look at that. Could I ask trustee DeMarco to say a little bit about that? Or excellent job.
Sure, so the committee, we work together to create an outline of different protocols that have been circulated to the board, waiting for feedback, and then we will meet again as a committee prior to our next board meeting to just fine tune and polish the items that come. And then we will be prepared to present it at the December meeting.
Thank you. The ACSBA report, trustee Miller, put together that report. Any questions on the ACSBA report? Trustee.
Sorry, couldn't find it right. Yeah.
It was a short report.
Yeah. It was. That was good. No other questions for trustee Miller? And we're down to some good news stories. So we start with Leduc. Jeez, get some good news stories from Leduc for us.
One of our Leduc trustees.
Oh, yes, yes, that was a pretty good,
Yeah,
good news.
You want to
Go ahead. You started, sorry.
Congratulations to trustee Miller for being elected as vice president of PCSD.
But that was pretty big good news for all of us. The good news items from Drayton Valley.
Well, it's been a while since we've had a board meeting, so Catholic Education Sunday was a very excellent event, and it was good to see our staff and students and everyone in attendance there and celebrate Catholic.
Thank you. Beaumont.
Yes, I'll start with Catholic Education Sunday. It went really well. We've had to choir from St. Andre doing music, and the principals just really came to their screening and get lots of people. And the other thing is that we're making at St. Vital, they're selling the French traditional pie, tortilla. So they're all being made at Mother DeVille. So Jordan let them be the kitchen and food staff. So we went and helped them, we asked to come volunteer. So they're on sale for $15 each, and they're making 800.
Oh, wow.
And they sell it very quick.
Great.
I'm thinking like he's how to make it too.
No, not that. So, but,
It's a fundraiser.
yeah, but
Good, very good. About Canoga.
just had our Catholic Education Sunday and it went really well. We had pretty good turnout, staff, students. We played the cookies.
That's good, always baby.
Yeah, yeah.
That's great, thank you. Which is good.
Relatively same in task and celebration was okay, including the following weekend at Mamu, which was also well attended, as well implementing the school, and the school is always looking forward to some of the collaborations and to see where they go with the high school, which has always been on the radar, but the school is back again, right? So the high school is coming up as another issue, because when the school is full, people who know where their kids are going to great time. I'm surprised to see some of those acting out again. Yeah. Thank you.
So can I just add one? I just thought of it. This past weekend was the Feast of Christ the King. And the Christ the King staff, so the administrator and staff came and fulfilled all the ministries at Mass. It was really great. It was great to see the staff there and participated in Mass, and it was and then they had a fellowship at their school afterwards, so that was really great. Great event for them.
Great, thank you. So in Lacombe, well, we had Remembrance Day, and unfortunately I had COVID. So I had to get someone else to put the wreath down, but I did get in the paper. That was nice from Star Catholic Literary. And then Catholic Education Sunday was it turned out well, but unfortunately I couldn't be there because of COVID. And the trustee from Red Deer Catholic who had scheduled to come, she had to text in the morning that she was sick. So we had to rely on our amazing principal, Maria. And I gave her my speech and she had to adjust it a little bit, take Cynthia out and do a few things there, and she did that. And also I had to get someone else to pick up the cake, but it all, I guess, went over fine. I didn't get to see any of it, but everyone said it was pretty good, and Maria did. Of course, Maria's, she's very good at doing things like that, so she did an excellent job. So those were two events that I wish I could have been there, but didn't happen. So but it was my good news that our principals were able to make hold of it. Good. Anything else? Any other news stories anyone forgot? Then we go on to the board's annual work plan. And we have December coming up. Not too much. The annual insurance report should be interesting. Invited our next December meeting, we'll be hosting central office and stuff for Christmas lunch. Then the board calendar. So our next meeting is December the 20th. December 1st is the ASBA Zone 2-3 meeting. That's about it. The trustee expense claim, be sure to get your expense claims in the end of every month if possible. And the board action sheet, Mr. Richard.
One item, Madam Chair, schedule a policy committee meeting to discuss the motion to create a First Nation, Métis and Inuit relations policy.
Thank you. I have no correspondence, so we're down to the closing prayer. Break that up. Thank you. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. The Lord, my God. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, amen.